Hello, this is Mark from Gary's Guitars. I'm here with the Fender Deluxe Reverb Tonemaster Edition, and I want to talk about this amp a little bit. And this started with, I've seen some other reviews on it, and there's some things that are out there and some things that aren't out there. So this will be a bit of a critique as well. I'll say things, on both sides, the pros and the cons. And I'll start with saying that this amp is not necessarily, I'll start with saying this amp is good. I have one myself. I am a vintage amp snob. I have, probably about 4 or 5 vintage Fenders, from the 60s and 70s. I have a lot of, probably about, I lose count, 18, 19 amps of my own, all vintage, except for 2. This one is one of them. So it's a handy tool, and this is how I like to talk about this amp with people when here in the store, which is, do you remember the Nord keyboard? Before the Nord keyboard, not everyone plays a Nord, right? If you, just, it's ubiquitous, the little red keyboard, that sounds great. But let's go back 10, 15 years, or definitely 15 years, when everyone wasn't playing a Nord. What was out there for keyboards? There were these, Yamahas, Casios, and whatever that had 200 sounds, and none of them were any good. Or all of them were like, okay, and everyone just kind of put up with it. And so Nord thought, let's do this. Let's make a great keyboard, use all the processing and memory power to make the sounds great, and we'll only put, and it's mostly for Hammond organ, and we'll put a few other samples in there, and that's it. It was to make Hammond sounds, Wurlitzer, just vintage keyboard sounds. And it only had 7 sounds in the original one. And it took over the world because all keyboard players did not want sitars, most of them. I mean, it's a fun thing to scroll through sounds and find creative, interesting things. But most keyboard players just wanted to play organ and piano and a few electronic, the Wurlitzer sound and the Rhodes sound. But, and then it became ubiquitous, and now all the indie rockers are playing Nords, because that's what you play, because you saw, even though they didn't grow up playing Hammond organs and wanted a lighter version of a Hammond organ, which is why I got a Nord. But it was the first keyboard to do that. And why am I talking about keyboards so much? Because this digital amp is built on similar principles. It makes the sound of a Fender amp, and that's it. So you have people go like, oh, I got my Line 6, oh, I got my Axe Effects, I got this and that, and there's a lot of powerful processing things that have a million sounds, and you can play with them and dial them in and get all your sounds. I remember Mark Knopfler decided to use a amp simulator on his tour, and his guy spent 8 months getting all the Mark Knopfler sounds right. They were right when they went out, but that's a lot of work. Sometimes you just want to reach right behind the handle and flip it on where the power switch is on all Fender amps. This amp even has a standby, even though it doesn't need one because there are no tubes in it. But it's that familiarity. This is a Fender amp. They use all the processing power and all the memory to make sure it was a tool that you could use like you would use the analog tool. Just like the Nord keyboard did, it had drawbars on it. The first ones had buttons, but you could control, because everyone wanted to control those harmonies individually, and all the Roland and all those other, you had to scroll through sounds, and you just want to mess with the drawbar sometimes. You just want to take the reverb up a quarter of a notch or a half a notch once in a while if you're not feeling the reverb at that volume. You just want to mess with the vibrato for a second between songs. That's what this does. It acts like a Fender amp. Now there's a lot of people, and someone told me this, someone was like, I played all night through this amp, and after the show someone said, oh, that was the digital Fender. And they didn't realize it while they were doing it. And that's a good ringing endorsement. Because this is 80% like a Deluxe Reverb. Now, if you look at the official Fender stuff, it's like, this is 100%. We put them side by side. We had the 2 teams working together to make sure that this digital amp was exactly what you want when you buy a Deluxe Reverb. there are some differences because they work on a different principle. So here are the differences. The output on this is full range. It's a Class D, power amp. So on a tube amp, because you have the output transformer and because you have tubes, you have an equalization curve that is tube-like to the output stage as well as the preamp stage. This has a wide open output. What does that do? It makes a really cool, powerful sound at a low volume. So, we were practicing with this, me playing through this, and my friend Charlie's got a Blues Junior, played it for forever, he loves it. But this amp really made the Blues Junior sound like it had a blanket over it. Just the powerful, even though you're not using that power, especially because I ended up using the output attenuator, which I'll talk about in a minute. Especially if you're not using that power, the power's there, and this is how you find that, or how you can feel it. It's just hit the top of your guitar right over the pickup, and it goes boom, like a kick drum, which a regular deluxe reverb won't necessarily do. But I liked that. It was a cool sound. Now this is the output attenuator, which allows you, which is the settings on the back, and it allows you to tamp down the amp to behave like a lower wattage amp. So you can turn the volume up and get that kind of grindier sound you would get cranking a twin or a deluxe, but without cranking it. That is a cool feature. I ended up using that. I started it wide open because I'm like, I want the wide open sound. I want the the real deluxe sound. I was like, oh, if I take this down a couple notches, like, ooh, there's the sound. The wide open sound is kind of like a twin, even though it says deluxe, and this isn't the twin. Well, they do make a Tonemaster twin reverb, but it's a wide open sound. And then the XLR out is super handy to make sure you get your sound to the front of the house without someone messing with it too much. Of course, SM57 in front of it, and someday I'll make a video where I put SM57 and compare it to the the speaker simulator switch and see if it's really doing it. But it does it. It's not a DI sound. It has a speaker simulator, which means when you're on the direct out, it's not just direct. You get of course all your settings, but you get the kind of feeling like you're going through a speaker. Also, recording this is great because you can easily get sounds quickly. Just plug in an XLR cable and boom. So if it's someone's like, you know what, I want some some Strat in the chorus, it goes chicka 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 chicka, one of those Nile Rodgers things, and it's like, oh, right here, just like click it on, plug it in, the sound is there. And if it's not, it's not like I'm going for that, super something. I want the 110% of the sound, but I just gotta make a track. It's a great tool for doing that too. So, someone did say, and it's true, that it has no headphone out. It has none of the things that a lot of digital, even the Mustang series and the Fender, don't have. It doesn't have a headphone output. It doesn't have a way to turn off the speaker. So some people think these are flaws, and maybe they are, but it really works like an old Fender amp. Like I said, the switches are in the same place. The hardware is all in the same place. It's just to make you feel like you're playing the old amp. And that is an advantage. So, and we also have this thing where when you have limitations rather than ultimate, like I said, there's 200 sounds on your Yamaha keyboard or the 7 on your Nord keyboard, why you're drawn to the Nord, because all those choices aren't necessarily what you want or need. Sometimes you want the limitations. And in this digital world where everything is possible, it can get overwhelming. If you want a Fender amp that you can plug into and turn on, and it sounds like a Fender amp, and it never needs tubes, and the transformers don't blow up, and any of those things that happen sometimes in the tube amp world, this is the amp. And of course, it's half as heavy as a regular deluxe. It's 24 pounds rather than 40 something probably. Super lightweight for an amp, and it works. Now, here's a couple things, and this was actually, some of this I saw the Phil McKnight video about this, where he complained about the headphone thing, and they also said, well, if there's a version 2 and these become like the undesirable, obsolete thing, then the first owner is out of luck. Well, you're not really out of luck. I predict, just like on the Nord, I have a 15-year-old Nord, I think it's 15 years. It's version 2, it's the first stage 2. And I still got it, and it still works fine for me. I bought it on the used market, which means that I got it cheaper, and it does the things I need to do, and that's it. These amps will kind of live on in that way too. So even if they do come up with other features, if they later put a headphone jack on or whatever, it doesn't. This thing doesn't blow up, or it doesn't lose all its value at once. It's still an amp that you can sell as a used amp. Now overall, how it's kind of a Tesla situation where, if this does need to get fixed, who's going to fix it? The dealer, essentially, has to fix it. Although I haven't been inside one of these, but I can't imagine there's a lot of, maybe in the power amp section, it's like fixing a PA speaker kind of stuff. But haven't seen one fail yet. That's good news. And let's just, this is the first few years of it. No bad reports, so wouldn't quite worry about that either. So, in general, I recommend this. Is it an exact replica of a Deluxe Reverb, as Fender claims? I wouldn't say exactly. Does it have the sound? Yes, it has the Fender sound. Though the treble and bass controls work a little differently than they would on the original Deluxe, because, as you know, if you turn those all the way down, you lose everything, and on this you don't. It's a little high-endy. It has no bright switch, which is good because the treble control is, you can add as much high end as you want. You can dial it out too if you want without losing your sound completely. But, and like I said, it has that you can get a thunderous bass on it because it does have a full range output amplifier. So, it's a handy tool. I'm not getting rid of my A100 Hammond organ. I'm not getting rid of my vintage Fender amps, but I got the Nord and I got the Deluxe Reverb Tonemaster, and we live in a world where both these things can be true. So, thanks for watching Gary's Guitars, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Check us out, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff.